Hey everybody, welcome to Coffee Time at the Water's Edge. I'm so glad that you decided to join us this morning. Grab a cup of coffee, pull up, and listen in on this conversation with Kathleen and I on marriage. Hey everybody, welcome once again to Coffee Time at the Water's Edge. I'm joined by Miss Kathleen Riccio, the wonderful hostess of Tea Time and frequent guest now on Coffee Time. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm tired.
Yes. Yeah. It's Saturday morning. We're actually drinking coffee when you should drink coffee in the morning. And so we got a topic today. We were asked a question. It just simply said, talk about marriage. So we're going to talk about marriage, and we'll kind of frame that and limit the scope of that because that's so broad. But first, let's cheers. We're not introducing any kind of specialty coffee. This is the good old church coffee. It only hits right on the weekends. Yeah. You can only have church coffee on Saturday or Sunday. All right. So this was a question we got from a listener in our queue. We were going back through a bunch of questions we have. And this one just said, talk about marriage. And so when we were talking about recording, we thought, this is a good one, for a few reasons. One, contextually, I just celebrated 22 years of marriage to Lisa last weekend. We were excited to celebrate our anniversary together. I'm also doing a bunch of weddings. I have a couple weddings lined up this coming weekend. I'll be going down to Miami, Florida, doing a wedding down there. And in July, my niece is getting married, right? So I'm meeting with a bunch of couples, doing premarital counseling, thinking about these early years of marriage. And so that's what we kind of decided we would limit the scope of this topic instead of talking about everything there is to talk about in marriage.
Yep.
Let's talk about those first couple of years. Let's talk about what advice, what things have you learned? You haven't been married a super long time, but I think you got, 5 years now?
Yeah, almost 5 years, yeah.
So you're a little bit of a veteran there.
Yeah,
that counts.
Yeah,
That's a veteran.
Yeah.
So let's talk about really what are some of the things that you've learned? What are some of the things that just surprised you? I don't know. There's a whole lot you can talk about when you're approaching this. What are some of the best pieces of advice? This is what we want to walk away with.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would we give to these couples getting married?
Yeah. Well, I think, so we've been married, it'll be 5 years in July, so pretty soon. And we've gone through a lot of changes, just like one after the other. We've had 3 kids. We've moved twice. My husband joined the Navy. It's like one thing after another. And so I think through that, we've learned, how to communicate, how to, sacrifice for the other person, a lot of things, but I think obviously communication is a big buzzword with how to have a good marriage. You need to communicate but it's true.
Rightly so, yeah.
Yeah. So I think you've mentioned in sermons before too, just communicating expectations. I think that's something that even we still are working through, where one person has this expectation in their mind and they're not communicating that, and then they get disappointed and upset, and it's just this whole merry-go-round. So and I think especially for women, and I've talked to friends about this too, where I think for some reason we feel he should just know what to do, he should just know, and if he doesn't know, then that means he doesn't care, and we just go down this spiral. And I think that took me a couple years to get over, having to say hey, can you please do this? Can you, or just even the way that we speak to each other, hey, when you say this, or when you say it this way, it makes me feel this way. And then he's like, oh, okay. I didn't know that. Or, and also communicating when you do appreciate something that they're doing. I think especially for men, I think they, and I don't know, you could speak to this too, but I think they need that encouragement where, if you're not saying oh, thank you for doing that, or I appreciate that, then they're you don't know what you don't know. So they don't they're not going to feel encouraged if you're not taking the time to point that out to them.
Yeah, respect is really high for men. It's like love and respect. The respect is very high on the man's sort of psyche, like what it is that feeds them, that makes them feel valued. And when you communicate the things that you appreciate, they do feel respected instead of just not appreciated. Or
something that I heard a while ago was Elizabeth Elliot has this 80-20 rule, she called it, where, and she was talking mainly to wives, but I think it can go both ways, where you focus on the 80% that your spouse does well and you encourage that and give grace to the 20% that maybe they don't do so well, instead of focusing on the 20%. And then that kind of becomes your whole perception of them when you're only focusing on the things that they might not even be doing wrong, or they're just not doing it the way that you want them to do it. And that was really helpful for me, I think, just even now, just to help like refocus.
What you're saying makes so much sense for a very simple reason. It's like, if communication is so important because it's needed, especially when things are hard or when there's difficult conversations to be had, things aren't going well, you have to be able to communicate well. But if you have no practice communicating well when things are good, then it's even more difficult to communicate well when things are hard, right? So it's like, get practice actually communicating with one another verbally and in all the right forms, so that you have sort of that established communication and flow, that when things are difficult, it's not as hard to have a conversation about real things. I think that it makes sense for that reason. It's like, most of our communication should be good, should be positive, but it should be happening. And if it's not happening, then when it does happen, if it's only about conflict, it's going to be frustrating every time, right? Yeah,
that's a good point. But I think one of like our bigger things that we would always kind of get into an argument about was, if I was worried about something and just kind of venting or getting upset, his immediate response would be like, you just need to calm down, you need to chill out. Those are like his two phrases. And that's not and he wasn't even being mean. I think it took like a few arguments for us to finally communicate like what I was feeling and what he was feeling. And I think at one point he finally was like, well, when you're getting upset or when you're worried about something, I feel like I need to fix it. And I just want you to calm down so that I feel like I'm fixing it, kind of thing. And then for me, I was like, well, when you just tell me to calm down, I think at one point I was like very sarcastic and like, oh, okay, like I'll just calm down then. So, Well,
it might feel invalidating. Like, like it's not that easy.
Right.
Like, this matters. There's a reason I'm worked up. I can't just shut it off.
So then it was like, okay, well, I just need you to listen. Like, if I'm worried about something, it doesn't mean that I'm upset at you or I don't think you're doing a good job. I'm just upset about the situation or whatever. So just like talking through that and not getting so something that I actually asked him before we recorded this episode, just like from his perspective, and he said just like not attacking one another and like remember that you're on the same team, you're one flesh, you're not two individual people fighting against each other. Like if you're married, you're one flesh and you're on the same team. And I think it's very easy, especially in today's culture, to feel like you're still entitled to like your own, like I'm always right, and so my feelings are always valid, and so I need to push against you.
I think immediately one of the scriptures I highlight in premarital counseling always is to have this mindset from Philippians 2 that says, don't look to each of your own interests, but look to the interests of others. And if you apply that to marriage, it's like you realize marriage is not 50-50, like it's 100-100. And when you're looking out for Mike's interest 100%, he's looking out for your interest 100%. Both of your needs are being met. When our needs aren't being met, that's when we can try to be takers in order to get legitimate needs met. And we can be manipulative. There's a whole lot of things that can be scheming sort of behind the scenes or underneath the surface when we're not looking out for each other's interests. And so what you're saying is spot on. it's recognizing we're on the same team. I got your back, you got my back. We're looking out for each other's interest. When we do that, both of our needs are being met in a beautiful way where we're not having to manipulate a conversation, a situation to get what I want or need or even need, like legitimate, intimacy needs that we have. And so it's such an important point of we're not, it's not a battle of the sexes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this is a one flesh union, and it's a beautiful thing when it's done well.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And I think when we, like having kids too, that's like a whole other sanctifying aspect of your marriage, because you really have to work together, and it's very easy to turn it into like, well, I did this and this, and so you need to do this, like kind of keeping tabs on each other, like, well, I did the dishes, so you need to do the laundry, or like, well, I did this yesterday, so now it's your turn. And like, of course you can discuss, like those tasks and stuff.
You start keeping score.
Yeah.
And that automatically creates sort of competition.
It's not good. It's not good.
There's no scorekeeping. We got to stop that.
But yeah, something else that I was thinking of too with kids, more so for like the woman, I think it's very easy to, when you have a baby, the baby primarily wants to be with mom. Like even if you're bottle feeding, they still like, you're just the mom. Like it's just, they want to gravitate to you. They want to be held by you for the most part. And so I think the dads can have a hard time with knowing what to do and like how to help, and they want to help you, but that's a whole other thing that you have to discuss and talk about, and not just keep all the thoughts in your head. But something that I struggled with when we had our first was accepting his help, because I just personality wise, I like to have control of everything. I'm like very type A. And so, and he is not like that as much. Like he just does things differently. And so
he's really chill.
Yeah, it was very hard for me to like, well, if I let you get her dress, and you're not going to do it the way that I want to, so I'm just going to do it. And then it turned into me being overwhelmed, but it was really my fault because I wasn't letting him help. And I remember one time, I think I was trying to rock her to sleep, and I was getting really frustrated. I was really tired and like simultaneously angry at him that he couldn't help me, but I also didn't want him to help me. It was like this whole thing. And I think I think one day he just came up, he was like, just give her to me. Like I'll take her. And that was really hard for a while for me. I don't even think he knows this, but it was hard for me in the beginning.
But this is where your communication, that importance of communication is so important, to be able to talk through this, because you're conflicted in your own mind and heart right there.
Right.
And you're setting him up unfairly in a lose-lose situation. It's like, I'm mad at you for not helping me, but I also don't want you to help me.
Yeah.
It's not a win thing.
Yeah. Or even just like, even if you don't have kids, even if it's like the way that he loads the dishwasher, like he literally loads the dishwasher differently than I do. And I had to get over that.
I was thinking about that as you were talking about the other thing. I'm like, it's like complaining. That's a great illustration. It's like complaining about not getting help with the dishes. And then when you do get help, it's like complaining about how it's done.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we do that stuff, isn't it?
I know.
So I think for marriage, so if you're not married yet and you're dating, you're thinking about getting married, it's so important to go through premarital counseling. I can't emphasize that enough. Like studies bear this out. Couples have a 75% higher, less likely chance of divorce if they go through premarital counseling. And I don't know if that says anything about the quality of the premarital counseling at all. I think it has more to say with the work they're willing to put into the relationship. And I think for me, that's what I want to emphasize, even in the dating phase. It's like, are we thinking about getting married? So I think that's the purpose of dating. And if so, are we willing to work on this relationship to have a marriage that thrives, not just survives? Yeah. And I think premarital counseling is kind of the first step in that when you're getting into that more serious conversation. I don't even think it's unwise. I think it's wise to do that even pre-engagement if possible. Yeah. I don't know if I've ever actually done that. Most of the time people, when they come to me for marriage or counseling, it's they're already engaged. So there's a few things I like to emphasize right up front, and you've touched on a few of them. I do a minimum, a baseline minimum of at least 4 sessions, and I want to do more with each couple. But if I only have 4, time-wise or whatever, the 4 that I do is the very first one when we meet. Usually Lisa and I will have them over for dinner, if that's possible, and we will just simply talk about their relationship history, how they met, because there's something we're trying to accomplish there too. We're trying to get them to think about all the things that came into play that the Lord was providentially doing in their lives that they may not have even realized.
Yeah.
It's like for Lisa and I, like we were born in 2 different states. Like I was born in Florida. She was born in Ohio. My parents had to make a decision to move to Ohio, for our lives to ever intersect.
Yep.
But I look at that as part of the providence of God in providing me a wife one day, because, that's, biblically, I think marriage is God's provision for us.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at relationship history. It's getting to know them, getting them to think about their presuppositions of marriage. This is even before talking about expectations. This is thinking about what has informed your view of marriage. Most likely, for most people, it's their parents' marriage, because that's what you've seen, what you've observed. Were your parents divorced? Or do you have siblings? Were they married? What is it about their marriages that you would like to emulate? What is it about their marriages that you would want differently? And that's always a hard question to ask for young couples when they're thinking about their own parents, because generally we don't always have the best examples in front of us.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, I can see this in my parents. They do this well. But here's a whole list of things that we want to do differently. And that's a helpful exercise, because now you're thinking, okay, what has really shaped my view of marriage? Is it the scriptures, or is it just what I've seen around me? And it's a combination of both for most people. And so undoing that and letting the scriptures be sort of that authoritative vision caster of what a marriage should be. That's the first session. Then we do the expectations one. I think that's really important to do up front. We call it Great Expectations. It is, and you said this, everybody has expectations. Not everybody communicates those. So they exist, whether or not we communicate them, they're unwritten. And when those expectations are not met, it leads to disappointment. If you, I really think you could define, I don't know if I've ever looked up the actual definition of the word disappointment, but I think I would write it as unmet expectations.
Yeah.
Like you thought something was going to go one way and it didn't, therefore you're disappointed. Almost every case of disappointment is due to some unmet expectation. And there's a lot of disappointment in those early years of marriage because we had certain expectations about how life would be. So when we do that sheet, this is just a worksheet I give them to work through individually first and then to talk about together. And it's like extremely practical. Yeah. It's like, how many times a week do you think you're going to go out to eat?
Yeah.
It's like, who's going to fold the clothes? Who's going to do the laundry? And it's like all these household things. It takes topics. And then there's a spiritual section. Like, how often do you expect to pray together? How often do you expect to, get in the Word together, to go to church together? All of these things. So you just kind of take each area of your life, think about it compartmentally, and then bring it under this of, okay, what are some expectations that I have for how we are to interact in these spaces? Yep. And that's a really helpful thing. How many kids do you plan on having? And it's good to get couples to think about this stuff in advance, because what it does is it can eliminate unnecessary obstacles down the road. Yeah. And one of the most important ones in that section is, how you're going to do holidays. Like if you're like, especially in a Navy town, like people meet, they get married, their parents are in different states. You introduce kids into that. Oh, I want Christmas over here. Oh, I think we should do Christmas over here. Like there's a whole lot of very practical stuff that can, if you think about it in advance, you can avoid a lot of unnecessary arguments, I guess.
Yeah. And you don't even need to have a decision for all those things right then, but at least to know, are you open to changing your mind, or are you really set on something? And those things
change. So it's funny. Lisa and I did this stuff when we got married. Yeah. So that's kind of how the book that I'm going to show you is the one that we actually went through 20 years ago. Yeah. But yet it's been revised. And so it's interesting for us to look back at our answers back then of, how idealistic we were or just how naive we were in some cases, but even how our expectations have shifted over time. And it's a beautiful thing. Then we do a biblical one. Like the third session is always Bible. What does the Bible say about marriage, male headship, submission? What does it say about God's design for marriage, one flesh union? So we walk through Genesis there, specifically the creation of woman. Like God's creation was declared good, and he said one thing's not good. This is before sin entered through Adam, and that thing he declared not to be good was for man to be alone. So he provides him, so God's provision of a wife, and he tells Adam to leave his mother and father and to cleave to his wife. Yeah. And the two shall become one flesh. And so we walk through that teaching of what does it mean first to receive your partner as God's provision. That adds a little something extra to the strength of a marriage when we recognize like this is not an accident. Like God designed this. God provided Michael to you. God provided Lisa to me. To leave mother and father, that means we're cutting cords of dependence emotionally, financially on parents, and we're creating a separate entity and unit, because that can be the source early on of a lot of arguments and a lot of conflict is the in-laws. Yep. And it's unfortunate that that's the case, but the dynamics have to change in the way you relate to mom and dad once you get married. So it's receive, leave, cleave. What does it mean to cleave together? There we talk about divorce. Like God hates divorce. God wants this to be for a lifetime. Yep. How do we cleave to them? We tell couples to remove that from the vocabulary, kind of take that option off the table. Yeah.
That was something that like, I think now it's getting more popular to like, even among Christians, to be like, you know, I'll stay with you, but like if they ever do this, then like I'm leaving.
Look for the loopholes.
You need to like, I think if you have that in your head, like you need to talk about that, because, and that was something for us like that we talked about. I don't remember if we were dating or engaged, but it was like, you know, would you ever be okay with divorce? No, like that's, like you said, we're not even going to talk about it. It's not an option.
Yeah, you take that option off the table, then it forces you to work through your problems. Like, we know that's not an option. We are going to work through this. And then the last piece is what does it mean to be one flesh? Like intimacy, physical intimacy. It's not just that, but it is that. Spiritual intimacy, emotional intimacy. So we kind of go down that road. That's the third session. And the last session is always communication, like of the fourth. If we keep going, I'll do finances. We'll get into books, budgets. Like we get very, very practical. We'll do a whole session on like sex itself. There's a lot of other sessions I'll do if time permits, but the top four are that get to know you one, the great expectations, God's equation for marriage, 1 + 1 = 1. That's what it's called in the book. And then the fourth one is authentic communication. And that regarding communication, we're talking about expressing yourself in a way that's clear and understanding. So communicating to be understood and listening to understand. Like those are the big points. And we talk about conflict resolution within communication as well, because we have different default ways of responding when conflict arises. Yeah. Usually people don't have the same default. Yeah. Like you have one person who's the fight to win type. They're going to stand their ground and dig their heels in and fight to the death. Yeah. And then you have another person that is probably going to run, to flee. Yep. You have others who are just going to yield. And all three of those are not good. Yeah. Like all three of those, we need to learn about each other so that we can, handle conflict well. And then ultimately, like loving resolution is the ideal. So how do we get there? So I think that those are the things I want to communicate early on in marriage. But if I'm giving advice, I want to tell couples, first and foremost, put Christ at the center of your marriage. Like recognize his lordship for you as a Christian and for your home. And submit to the authority of Jesus Christ and his word when it comes to the way we relate to one another in marriage. Because I think that's just central. It's central to the Christian life. It's central to the home, to the marriage. And then you can get all kinds of practical stuff. So what else for you? Is there anything else you feel like you would want to tell a newlywed couple? Or any other lessons learned? Yeah.
So a couple things, just about like putting God first in the marriage and like remembering that he is ultimately the authority over both of you. I think for the woman specifically, like I kind of already talked about, like letting him help with things, but just the general idea of submission. I think it's easy, and I know we've talked about it before on the podcast, but it's easy to like associate submission with like these big issues that are going to come up. And I think I used to think about it like that too, but it is more of like an attitude, even in like the day to day. And I feel like accepting their offer to help, like your husband's offer to help with things, is one way to do that. And then also just if, like practical things come up, like budgeting or like what are we going to do this week or whatever, not coming into it with the attitude of like you're always right and you're smarter than him and you know more. And maybe I think it's easier to feel that way if you're like a stay-at-home mom, because you're in the home all the time with the kids, and so it's easy to feel like, well, I know more than you do, like you're working all week, I'm the one that's here. But I love that passage, that everybody knows, talks about submission in 1 Peter 3, specifically the part that says how the women of old hoped in God by submitting to their own husbands. And if you flip it around and just think like, okay, I'm gonna trust in the Lord that he knows what's best and not me, and I'm gonna let go of my own preferences and put him first, and ultimately trust God that God knows best and not myself. I think it's really hard to do. But ultimately you're not, putting yourself down and just saying like, well, I don't matter. You're saying, maybe I'm right. And maybe you still feel like, I really don't agree with his idea. But if it's more of like a preference thing, you can let go of your own preference and say, no, I'm going to trust God. I'm going to let this go. I'm going to give him the opportunity to lead. Because I think that's another thing, is that we don't even give them the opportunity to lead. We don't even ask them their opinion, or if they have an idea, we immediately want to shut it down. And I don't think that's fair to them. So yeah, just letting go of that need to control and ultimately trust that God is sovereign over your marriage and your routines.
Yeah. I think that's so good, the way you frame that, thinking about submission to the Lord, because let's face it, like a lot of women really struggle with that word, submission, and what the Bible says about that. And our culture conditions us to push against that.
Yeah.
And, I've literally multiple times had women say, I love the Bible, I love my husband. That submission thing, like that's literally how it's been put to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is it about that you think God got wrong? Do you think God got this wrong? What do you think it means? What do you think God's communicating here? And so it's like, to get people to see, like, this isn't your opinion doesn't change what God's word says.
Yeah.
And we're either going to follow the Lord or we're not, know, but I get all of that. We've done so much talking and teaching about that over the years because it's needed and it's necessary. And there's a lot of cultural undoing to do with that. Yeah.
And they forget to, like, what the men are called to. Like, it talks about the woman being the weaker vessel, and the husband is supposed to cherish his wife and die for her. Like, it's not just this one-sided thing where women are just put down and men can do whatever they want. It takes both of those things. And you also, and I don't know if this is wrong, but I don't know if, like, you're only really called to submit to your husband if he's, like, following the Lord, right? Like, if he's not following the Lord, then, like, can you?
It's really tricky. Not in ways that are ungodly,
right?
But as far as you can, I still think you should be in submission to your husband, even if he's not a believer,
right?
And so you do that as far as you can, according to Scripture.
Yeah. But yeah, the last thing that I had thought of was just like dating your spouse and spending time together. I think just to not put so much pressure on yourself on what it's supposed to look like, because I think some people will say, like, you need to go out for dinner once a week, you need to hire a babysitter every week and go out for dinner, and that's not very feasible for most people. Like, that's a lot. It's a lot of money to spend.
A lot of coordination,
that's a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think don't feel like you're failing if you can't go out on dates regularly, and they don't need to be going out and doing activities together.
Money.
Yeah. And especially when you start having kids, like, it gets harder. And so because our kids are little, thankfully they have like a pretty set bedtime, and so we usually will put them to bed at like 7 or 7:30. We clean up, and then we like pick a movie to watch. We order some food, or we play a game together. Like, and it can be the simplest things, but whatever you do, I think you can choose to, like, I'm going to put my phone down. I'm going to be present. And those are usually like the best, like, date nights that we've had, is just being fully present with each other in our living room, you know, in our pajamas, like not going out on like a fancy dinner, which that's nice too. And we will do that once in a while, but,
no, your point's good.
Yeah.
Lisa and I found cheap ways to, like, like, sometimes we'll just go for a walk.
Yeah.
We got into riding our little beach cruisers last year, so we would just ride our bikes around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It was just good to spend time together where we're, you know, where we are present.
Yeah.
Not looking at our phones and things like that.
Yeah. Because I think it's hard when I remember feeling this way maybe like a year or two in, where you feel like you're out of the honeymoon phase and you kind of like panic a little bit because you're like, okay, I don't feel, you know, it doesn't feel like, there's some seasons where it doesn't feel very exciting. It doesn't feel as exciting as when you were dating, because dating was fun, and, you know, but then you get married, you start working, you get into your routines, and it's like, okay, this is our life now? But just to not panic when that does happen, and like you said, it takes work. I think that's when you really have to start putting the work into your relationship to keep that momentum going, and to, like, know that it's okay. It's okay if you don't feel all the butterflies. Like, there's some days where you're not really going to want to talk to each other that much, because maybe you're tired, and you just sit next to each other and watch a show and hold hands, and that's all you do, you know?
Yeah. Though the point about working is it's a never ending thing, right? I say Lisa and I've been married for 22 years, and I still feel like there's much work to be done, you know, and by all means, if you're observing, like, we have a great marriage,
right?
I feel like we've really prioritized the right things throughout our 22 years together. And at the same time, it's like I still realize that I fall short often, and she would say the same thing. And, you know, and I think that it's important to recognize, like, getting counseling, having mentors. That's a great thing for young couples. I would give that advice. Like, who are the couples you look up to? And ask them questions. Like, we did that with parenting, especially.
Yeah.
But it's good for marriage too. And to recognize, like, when churches do marriage retreats, when there's marriage conferences, that doesn't mean the fire doesn't have to be burning in your house in order to get help. It's like, even when things are good, those things can make them better and be enriching in those ways. So it's not a sign of weakness to read a book together about marriage, to do things that would increase your knowledge and increase your understanding of how you're relating to one another in order to improve it. And that would be true at any stage of marriage, not just in the beginning years, but to recognize that there's always work to be done. It's so important. Yeah, no, that's good. I think that's a lot of starting out, like, things, communicating well, putting the effort into work on your marriage, prioritizing the relationship, spending time together, being present. There's so many, like, little things that I think we could glean from this. It's good.
Yep.
Any final thoughts?
No, that was it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me.
Yep.
Thank you guys for hanging on. We're glad that you did. We hope that you found something in here. You might have some other advice that we didn't. We were just having a conversation over coffee here. And so if there's some advice that you would have that we did not mention, put it in the comments. Let us know. That'd be great to be able to read these comments on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this or watching this and see, oh, here's some other things. That would be really helpful. Like the channel, subscribe to it if you haven't done so. Thank you again. God bless you. Have a great week. Peace out.